Dawning of the Red of America. Welcome to the Savage Nation. It's final. It's done. It's over. The turning point has been passed. The tipping point has been reached. We are now becoming Venezuela and on the way to becoming Castro's Cuba. Welcome to the Savage Nation. Here are the questions for the day. Who will pay for the fraud, waste, and corruption called Obamacare? Number 3, is Roberts compromised? Number 4, today we investigate his medication and its effects on his cognition. Number 5, what can you do? The answer is nothing. Sleep is the best revenge. When in doubt, don't exercise, get horizontal. Why do I say that? Because many of you are being misled into believing that if only you'll elect a Republican, things will change. Well, let me remind you of something. Roberts is the spawn of Bush. Roberts is a compromised Supreme Court justice. I am the only one in the media who told you on Wednesday what was going to happen on Thursday. I told it to you Tuesday. Do you remember? I was off yesterday. I was on Tuesday. I took yesterday off because I saw this coming. And the reason I saw it is because they telegraphed it. And how they telegraphed it was they let that compromised beast called Roberts read the opinion about legalizing amnesty for well over 1.2 million illegal aliens. And so I tell you again, ladies and gentlemen, we are now becoming Venezuela and on the way to Castro's Cuba. And all of you smart liberals sitting up there on your high horses, who is going to pay for the fraud, waste, and corruption called Obamacare? Do you have any idea what this is going to cost you? You haven't any idea. All you think is that it's a good thing because Obama wanted it. Well, let me tell you something else. Your life is over as you know it. America is over as you know it. So let's talk about the issues today as they came down. Roberts himself compromised himself, that is clear. But Roberts criticized himself and has no logic in what he said. Listen to what this fool Roberts on the Supreme Court said today. Here is what he said. He said that it is a tax. He said it's a tax, but it wasn't written as a tax. So if it wasn't written as a tax, how could he say it was a taxation that he was passing? It was clearly in the Commerce Clause. Listen to what Roberts wrote. He said the following, and I got to find it exactly so that we don't miss the statement. I don't have it right in front of me, I'll be honest with you. It's a very hot day, possibly one of the most important shows I will ever do for you, because I will argue clearly for you that the individual mandate within Obamacare is not only unconstitutional, as I proved in trickle-up poverty, based upon the Schechter case, which was a clear repudiation of Obama's grandfather, FDR, in the 1940s. I am telling you that I know more about the law than Justice Roberts, because my mind is more clear. My mind is more rational. My mind is less just juggled up with politics than theirs are. And I am telling you right now, Roberts is the reason this happened. Roberts is on medication, and we're going to prove it on this show today. But the fact of the matter is, by forcing people to buy insurance, whether they want to or not, it will bankrupt America permanently. Who will pay for this? Who is going to pay for the fraud, the waste, and the corruption that is called Obamacare? You're telling me that they're going to control it? You mean the very same people who won't control the Medicare fraud, the Medicare mills that I've been pointing out on this show? Try the Medicare mills in San Francisco, and they won't even look at those. You're telling me they're not going to have fraud, waste, and corruption in this? You're crazy. Let me tell you something else. This is a national health care system. This is Castro care. This is what every communist dreams of. This is what every socialist dreams of. This is the pie in the sky that they all dream of, and he did it. And the reason Roberts voted with the psychotic Ginsburg, the incompetent at any speed because they don't have the IQ for it, Sotomayor and Kagan, put in there simply to be kangaroos on the kangaroo court. The reason Roberts did this is anyone's guess. So I'll ask you this. Here's the first question of the day, and no one can answer it. Do you think Roberts is compromised because the Chicago machine has something on him? Or, as I think, it is his medication that has affected his cognition? On the way to the radio station today, I stopped off at the University of California Medical Center and visited a world-famous neurologist who I know. And we talked about Obamacare. He said to me, check out Roberts' history with epilepsy. I said, what does that have to do with his vote today? He said, Michael, he said his cognition is affected by his epilepsy medicine. He said, the New York Times, he said, find the original article from the New York Times back in 2007 after Roberts was appointed. I said, well, why? He said, because after Roberts had a seizure They implied in the New York Times that his medication for his seizure disorder will cloud his judgment and affect his cognition. They were afraid, in other words, that he would be too conservative. Little did they know that he would be one of them. You'll notice today there was no talk about Robert's cognitive dissonance nor Robert's cognitive disorder. Okay, so we're going to talk about those things. And now I'm going to ask you a few other questions. Has anyone in the conservative media, anybody, can you name anybody who predicted this last Tuesday? No. I will also say to you that one of the reasons this happened is because of Rush Limbaugh and the Republican media complex that refuses to acknowledge Michael Savage's genius. I argued this case in Trickle Up Poverty. Many of you bought the book. There is an entire chapter which explains that this is unconstitutional. But because of the jealousy and the hatred of Rush Limbaugh, mainly jealousy on his part, and the hatred of the conservative media for Michael Savage, the last original voice in this country, that chapter was not well read. That chapter was not well promoted. That chapter was not well discussed in the conservative media. I blame them as much as I blame the liberals. But there's no point in arguing about that. Let's ask you this question. Now that he has absolute power, what do you fear dictator Obama might do next? Let me repeat that. Now that Obama has shown himself to have absolute power, what do you fear the dictator might do next? Well, there's the First, Second, Third, Fourth, Fifth, Sixth, Seventh, Eighth, Ninth Amendments to deal with, aren't there? First Amendment, speech, religion. He hasn't meddled with that yet, has he? But he has a model for that. The model is Canada, the European Union, and the UK, where there is no First Amendment. Expect changes with regard to freedom of speech. Second Amendment, the big one, right to bear arms. Mark my words. Just as I told you on Tuesday, he would do this on Thursday, and I was right. Mark my words. When this man is reelected in the next election, which he will be, as sure as I'm standing here, you could see it in Romney's face. You can hear it in Romney's reactions today. You could see it in the lackluster, do-nothing Republican Congress. When this man is reelected, he will take out the Second Amendment as sure as I'm standing here, because that's what liberals have wanted to do for well over 60 years. We'll also talk about the Third and Fourth Amendments later on. I'll ask you again, is Roberts compromised? Is Roberts' cognition affected by medication? And what will Obama do next? The phone number is 1-800-449-8255. Let's start in Austin, Texas. Bill, welcome to the Savage Nation.
Dr. Savage, as soon as I heard this verdict or decision or whatever, I said, this is why people must listen to Dr. Savage, because he is the one that said on Tuesday John Roberts would throw it, and he did.
I am the only one who saw it coming. The only one. And remember that. The next time you hear another one of these right-wing blowhards tell you that they know what's going on, they don't know what's going on. They're water boys for the corrupt Republican Party. Never forget that. Okay. I don't want to get angry at them today. I'm not going to get angry at all, because as I said to you, there's very little you can do right now. The whole concept of separation of powers is now dead in America. There is no separation of powers. When you can have a compromised, cognitively impaired justice like Roberts write an opinion that is unto itself illogical, you understand that there's no longer a check and balance in this country. How many other members of the Supreme Court are on drugs? How many members of Congress are on drugs? How many people who are writing away your life are on drugs? You don't have an answer to that, do you? But if you take a job in a corporation, you have to pee in a cup. I demand drug testing for everybody in Congress. I'll be right back.
Savage.
Look, before you get lost in the minutiae here, the fact of the matter is we are now becoming Venezuela and on the way to Castro's Cuba. I know how the far left thinks, and I know what their ultimate end game is. They want your guns, they want your freedom of speech quelled, and they want to own you from cradle to the grave. The keystone of all of this has always been nationalized health care. It's gone back to a very deep period of American history where let's not go any further than Kennedy. Today, Nancy Pelosi had the nerve to say that Kennedy can now rest in peace because he finally will see from heaven that we have the nationalized health care he has dreamed of. So what more Kennedy himself would be proud of this act today? So how did it happen? How did an appointee of George Bush side with the most radical left wing of the Supreme Court? Well, first of all, don't be surprised by that, because I told you George Bush was a fiscal socialist in the latter years of his regime. But let's not talk about Bush right now. He's history. Let's talk about Roberts. I'm going to tell you something that you're not going to hear anywhere else, that you must pay attention to. It's well known that Roberts, unfortunately for him, has suffered from epileptic seizures. Therefore, he has been on medication. Therefore, neurologists will tell you that medication used for seizure disorders, such as epilepsy, can introduce mental slowing, forgetfulness, and other cognitive problems. And if you look at Roberts' writings, you can see the cognitive dissociation in what he is saying. And I'll read it to you. It's 2 paragraphs. Try to focus. In the ruling, the Supreme Court decided that the most controversial provision, the individual mandate, which makes you buy health insurance, is valid as a tax, even though it is impermissible under the Constitution's Commerce Clause. However, it was not written as a tax. So Roberts wrote this. He said, in this case, however, it is reasonable to construe what Congress has done as increasing taxes on those who have a certain amount of income but choose to go without health insurance. Roberts continues and says, such legislation is within Congress's power to tax. But he's following from a point that is irrational. Who knows that Congress... Wait a minute. When did Congress say this was about increasing taxes? Answer, never. Congress never said this was about increasing taxes. Roberts then goes on in his irrationality and wrote this, quote, the federal government does not have the power to order people to buy health insurance. He says that. The federal government does have the power to impose a tax on those without health insurance. But this wasn't about a tax. It was not written as a tax. It was clearly never a tax. And then, to top it all off, to show you the cognitive dissonance in Roberts' brain that is going on, he concludes by saying that Congress exercised an authority it held to assess a tax rather than create any new taxing authority. Now, what does that mean? Can anyone figure that out? Congress exercised an authority it held to assess a tax rather than create any new taxing authority. What does that mean? This is a turning point in American history. We will never be the same again. This is the most left-wing piece of legislation that will change America forever. The law calls for an expansion of eligibility for Medicaid, which involves spending by the federal government and the states, which will bankrupt every state in the land. Every illegal alien in this country will cash in on this. Every bum in this country will now have gold-plated medical care. Every corrupt immigrant, whether it be from Russia or any other country that has already sacked this nation through Medicare and Medicare fraud, will now do so in spades. Let's go on. The fact of the matter is, even though every poll shows that the majority of Americans, by a large majority, wanted this to be struck down, once again, we no longer live in a representative government where the legislature or the executive or the judicial does what the people want. None of them will do anything that the people want. The fact of the matter is only the losers on the bottom wanted this to happen. And of course, the corruption that is inherent in countries like Sicily will now become inherent in America. What you see in a country like Sicily, mark my words, within 5 to 10 years, America will be just like Sicily. And I'll tell you something else. Many of you don't even understand what Sicily was. It was not always a corrupt nation. Sicily, you say, oh, mafia, Sicily, this, that. It wasn't always that way. It was not always that way. But once the gangsters got control of Sicily, they destroyed the country from within. And that is exactly the model that is being used in my analysis here in the United States of America. You are watching The Godfather and The Sopranos unfold right before your eyes. So don't get lost in any of the fine points of the argument. You are seeing the seizure of a nation and the abuse of a nation unlike any you've ever seen in your lifetime. And this is just the beginning. The fact of the matter is you ain't seen nothing yet. 1-800-449-8255, michaelsavage.com. I'll take your calls at any time on any topic related to this. We are now becoming Venezuela and on the way to Castro's Cuba. Number 2, liberals, who will pay for this fraud, waste, and corruption called Obamacare. Number 3, we investigate Robert's medication and its effects on his cognition. Number 5, what can you do? Answer, nothing. Don't listen to a word the Republicans tell you. They're going to try and use this, when you elect us, we'll overturn Obamacare. Well, use your head. What do you mean they'll overturn Obamacare? How? Let us say, for argument's sake, that doofus Romney wins. And let us say, for argument's sake, that the Senate becomes Republican. And so what? Then what? Tell me what happens then. Tell me what happens then. The answer is it goes to the Supreme Court again. When some Democrat, let us say they eliminate Obamacare. So someone sues to reinstate Obamacare. It goes to the same clowns in the Supreme Court, same result. So don't listen to anything Rush Limbaugh tells you. He's just Clarabelle with a big, big horn, and he works for the Republican establishment. You have no hope. Abandon all hope. There is no hope. The country is finished. It's over. Obama just drove a stake through the heart of America. That's my opinion. I'll be right back to hear your opinion.
Savage.